You are 18 years old, standing barefoot on cold marble, while an older woman removes the last object carrying your real name. She gives you a new name, points toward a locked corridor, and tells you to walk quietly. Behind that door is the Ottoman Imperial Harem. Popular stories call it a paradise filled with 3,000 beautiful women and one very lucky sultan. That is a convenient fantasy. The real place was closer to a royal household, a school, a prison, and a political battlefield packed into the same building. The number 3,000 is almost certainly exaggerated. The harem usually held dozens or hundreds of women, children, servants, princesses, and eunuchs. Still, there was one sultan, and only a tiny number of women would ever get close to him. Most of the others worked. They cleaned rooms, learned music, studied court manners, served senior women, and tried not to attract dangerous attention. In a palace, being noticed could bring promotion. It could also ruin your life. Many women came through slave networks linking the Caucasus, the Balkans, and the Black Sea. Inside, they might receive new names, learn Ottoman Turkish, convert to Islam, and train for service. Some were eventually freed and married to officials. A very small number rose much higher. But on your first night, you would know none of that. You would hear keys turning in the corridor and smell lamp oil on the damp stone. The walls were beautiful, because apparently captivity looks better with floral decoration. The woman who mattered most was often not the Sultan's favorite. It was his mother, the Valide Sultan. She could control money, discipline, appointments, and access. Below her stood princesses, favored consorts, senior attendants, servants, and new arrivals at the bottom. Beauty helped, but beauty alone was not enough. A woman also needed intelligence, patience, allies, and the rare skill of looking harmless while becoming dangerous. One former slave proved how far that could go. Her name was Hürrem Sultan. Hürrem entered as an enslaved woman, gave Suleiman the Magnificent several children, and eventually became his legal wife. That shocked the court. Before Hürrem, an unofficial rule often tied one mother to one prince. She would raise him and prepare him to fight for the throne. Each mother had one candidate. Each candidate had several brothers. This system looked organized until everyone started strangling each other. Hürrem's rise threatened Mahidevran, the mother of Prince Mustafa, one of Suleiman's most admired sons. Venetian reports describe bitter conflict between the women, including a possible physical attack. The details may have grown in the telling, but the rivalry was real. This was not simply jealousy. If your son became sultan, you could become the most powerful woman in the empire. If another woman's son won, your child might die. In 1553, Prince Mustafa entered his father's military tent and never came out alive. Executioners attacked him and eventually strangled him. Later writers blamed Hürrem, her allies, or Suleiman's fear that Mustafa was preparing a rebellion. There is no solid proof that Hürrem arranged his death, but Mustafa was dead, Mahidevran was broken, and Hürrem's sons were closer to the throne. Inside the Ottoman dynasty, motherhood was a political emergency with expensive clothing, and somehow it gets worse. Ottoman succession did not always pass to the oldest son. Several princes might have a claim. Once one became sultan, his brothers became threats. Mehmed II's law code allowed royal brothers to be killed for the order of the world. That sounds noble until you translate it. It meant killing your brothers before they found soldiers. When Mehmed III became sultan in 1595, he ordered the deaths of 19 brothers. Most were young. Royal blood was not supposed to be spilled, so they were strangled. Imagine mothers waiting behind closed doors as footsteps move through the corridor. A door opens. A child cries. Then the sound stops. The palace called this stability. The mothers probably had another word for it. Later, the dynasty used a supposedly kinder solution. Princes were confined inside a guarded section called the Kafes, or the cage. They remained alive, which officials apparently considered generous. But they could spend years isolated from government and ordinary life. They never knew whether the next visitor would announce a coronation or an execution. Sultan Ibrahim spent years in this fear after watching his brothers disappear. When officials told him he had become sultan, Later accounts say he hesitated to leave because he suspected a trap. First, the palace damaged a man through years of terror. Then it handed him an empire, a flawless management system. The harem also depended on eunuchs. Many black eunuchs had been enslaved in Africa and castrated before reaching the Ottoman capital. Those who survived guarded doors, carried messages, handled money, and controlled access to royal women. The chief black eunuch could become one of the most influential officials in the empire. He knew who entered, who left, and which letter quietly vanished. In politics, the man holding the key may matter more than the man sitting on the throne. European travelers claim some eunuchs secretly became lovers inside the harem. The evidence is weak, and many writers had never entered the rooms they described. Then there was Kösem Sultan. She entered as a consort of Ahmed I and became the mother of 2 sultans and grandmother of another. She served as regent and built alliances with officials, soldiers, and eunuchs. By 1651, the palace contained 2 powerful women, Kösem, the experienced grandmother, and Turhan Sultan, the young sultan's mother. Only one could dominate the harem. Rumors spread that Kösem planned to replace the child Sultan Mehmed IV with another prince whose mother would be easier to control. The exact plot is uncertain, but Turhan's faction moved first. Men entered Kösem's rooms at night. The woman who had controlled access to the throne tried to hide inside the palace she had ruled for decades. Accounts disagree about whether she was strangled with a cord, curtain material, or even her own hair. Some later stories claim her killers thought she was dead and had to return. That detail may be dramatic embroidery. Her murder was real. Kösem entered as an enslaved foreign girl, climbed to enormous power, and died trapped inside the same walls. And then we reach the most famous horror story. Some accounts claim Sultan Ibrahim discovered that one woman in the harem had taken a secret lover. When nobody confessed, he supposedly ordered 280 women tied inside sacks, weighted with stones, and thrown into the Bosphorus. It is repeated everywhere because it is perfectly designed for a dark history video. The evidence is another matter. Historians generally treat the story as doubtful, exaggerated, or invented. Ibrahim was unstable, his reign was chaotic, and he was eventually deposed and strangled in 1648. But that does not make every monstrous story about him true. The harem was secretive, and European writers filled that silence with sex, madness, and floating sacks. A rumor starts with one dark shape in the water. By the time it reaches another country, there are 280 bodies and a mad sultan laughing from a balcony. The real secret of the harem was less theatrical. It turned people into jobs. A girl became a servant. A favored woman became a possible mother of the next sultan. A mother became the manager of her son's survival. A prince became a threat before he understood the word. A eunuch became a living lock between 2 sides of the palace. Even the sultan was trapped. He needed sons, but too many sons could cause civil war. He needed powerful women, but every powerful woman created another faction. Nobody was truly free. Some people simply had nicer rooms. That may be the darkest truth. The palace measured human worth by access, fertility, bloodline, and usefulness. The doors were painted, the fountains kept running, and behind all that beauty, everyone listened for footsteps in the corridor, hoping the next knock meant promotion, freedom, or at least one more morning alive.